Hello everyone, welcome back to the second lesson on the hymn tune moment by moment. This time we're going to go over in more detail finger substitution and phrasing, repeating notes, and maybe a few little extra notes here and there. So let's begin. The first thing I'd like to show you is where to break up the notes and the phrasing and which notes you hold down. So let's start with the first note here, the C. We are holding that through, all the way through, with a bass note and the tenor. Here, of course, you change. But let's look at the bass. Note that the bass is the same note all the way through until here. That gets held. You do not repeat that note. The C, down here, same thing. F. You hold it every time you see a repeat, you hold it. The only difference is here with the melody, of course. You want to have it sing. The melody on your reed organ is what people will be listening to the most. Everything else becomes an accompaniment. So here we go. First note, of course, this is all legato. This is where it's a little bit backwards to where you would play a note in the accompaniment. In the melody line, you put a definite break there. Sometimes it's only held for half the value. When it's the same note, you break it. Melody only. So here it's all different notes. Here's the end of the phrase. Let's put a little break here. Again, we're going down. The notes, there's no repeats yet, but this section here, make note of this. This is the end of the line. We have a dotted quarter and an eighth note. It might be personal preference. I always like to put a break in this area for the melody when it's this scenario, the dotted quarter and the eighth at the end of the line. Again, this is the end of the phrase. So if I mark this phrase here, there, now we're starting our next phrase. Oh, that's not a very good phrase line, is it? Oh, we'll live with it. It repeats exactly what we did here again. Break, break, dot, 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 dot. And a phrase, of course, you put a little break here. You can lift all notes sometimes. Sometimes you can just lift the soprano note. It's totally up to you. Here we're starting our next phrase, or our last phrase of all the verses. There's no repeated notes here, but obviously we get a break here with a rest, and especially because it's an eighth note here at the end. Dot, dot. Here's that section again where we have the dotted quarter and an eighth. So let's put a little break here. And a break before we start the chorus. The chorus. Same rules. Hold that F, hold that C. Keep holding that F. So there's, we hold that C. It's not much else different here. Well, here we got the dotted quarter and the eighth, but it isn't at the end of the line, or end of the measure. Not measure, end of the bar. Since it is not at the end of the bar, we would keep it legato. You can put a little break here. Following it through again. This section, you're holding it, you're not breaking it because it's not at the end of the bar. End of phrase. Start our phrase again. Here's a repeat note. And again. Dot, da, da, dot. Another break. That's part of our phrase. Here's our last phrase. course, we're putting a little break here. Da, da, da. There is, at the end of the bar, that dotted quarter and eighth. So let's put another little break here, and then we're done. So if you were to play this without the accompaniment, it might sound a little choppy, but with the accompaniment, it starts to make sense. So I'll bring it over to the organ, and let's try this out, see how it sounds. Break, break. 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 Break there. The chorus. Notice I didn't break there. Legato. Break, break, break. Break. A dotted quarter and eighth. Break. Looking at legato, it's probably the hardest part to learn on a reed organ. Start with the right hand. Right now I'm on 3 and 5. I substituted the 3 with the thumb. I lifted up the thumb because it's going to become my next melody note. I'm going to substitute, get ready for the next phrase. Fingers are always substituting when you want the smoothest legato. Once you master the right hand, and you can add the bass and the tenor. Here, I have to lift up the alto note before I come to repeat it again. It still stays legato, but you want to make sure you get that alto off on that F. I think finger substitution is important in reed organ playing, especially because you have all these stops here and you need to change them. So you have to change and shift your fingers on the notes while holding them down while you're preparing your fingers to pull out the stop. Some stops might be a little harder to pull, so you need a good grip on them. Some organs, they might not be so hard to pull, depending on the maker. So let's take a look at the stop changes with finger substitution. Just with the melodia and diapason. I'm substituting my fingers to get ready to pull the Vox Celeste way over here. substituting my fingers again to pull the aeolin. Cello. Normally I wouldn't use these fingers for this chord because I'd want to prepare to get to my next notes, but I need to pull the cello. See how I lift off both fingers, not just the soprano, but the soprano and the alto. You can always add extra notes at the end of the phrase. Here's an example. Right here. This is where I play a G instead of an F, and then I resolve to the F. I could do the same thing again at the end of this phrase. With the F and the E this time. End of this phrase. There's your discordant one. It's the A and then down to the G. You can even do it at the end. If you do it too often, it might sound a little too much, but why not try it once in a while? It's always fun to change it a little bit. I hope that this will be enough to get you started on phrasing and finger substitution, just to see what I do, may give you some ideas what you can do, and stop changes, just the beginning of stop changes. I'll go into more stop changes and colors that are available on an organ later. On the next lesson, and we'd also like to look at treadle movements and how we can get expression into your playing. Until then, be creative, make music, and have fun. See you later.